What's up guys? Today I am bringing you another awesome DIY tutorial. In this video I am especially excited about because unlike the video where I powder coated my Brembos and I needed a whole powder coating setup, or the video where I built my rear diffuser and I needed to screw around with fiberglass and resin and all that stuff, this video is going to show you how to add texture to any shift knob for under $30, and all you need is PlastiDip. So before I get into this video, I want to thank my sponsor, which is Flossy Shift Knobs. I'm sorry, I can't say that without laughing. I am completely joking. Flossy is certainly not sponsoring me. In fact, they probably don't like me. But if you followed my channel for any period of time, then you know that last spring I bought a shift knob from them, but I ran into issues. Just a very brief recap for anybody who hasn't followed the channel that long. Last spring, I ordered a grip tape shorty shift knob from Flossy for $130, and I was quoted that it would take about 14 business days to complete my order and ship. 6 weeks later, I still had not received a shift knob, and what makes me even more frustrated with Flossy is there was absolutely no contact on their behalf to let me know what was going on or give me any explanation as to why my shift knob hadn't shipped yet, even though it was like 4 weeks overdue, right? That's all I'm going to say about that. There is a different video on my channel that actually goes into all the issues I've had with that company. However, in all seriousness, Flossy is 100% the inspiration for this video, so I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Chances are, if they had sent my shift knob that I asked for and that I paid them for, I wouldn't be making this video. So thank you, Flossy, for not sending my shift knob, because now I get to show off this awesome technique where you could add texture to any shift knob. This is stainless steel. However, this can be applied to just about any metal or plastic surface. That includes brass, stainless steel, obviously, aluminum, titanium, or any of your plastics, whether it's ABS plastic. I know a lot of shift knob companies use copolymer and things like that. So I can't advise that it's used on OEM shift knobs because a lot of those have leather, which I don't know what would happen. I don't know how PlastiDip would react with leather. It might deteriorate it and break it down. Or once that leather starts breaking down because it's old, it's obviously going to mess up the PlastiDip. So experiment with that at your own will and your own discretion. But pretty much any other surface that's metal or plastic will be safe because it's PlastiDip. So I'm going to get into this in a second, but let me go over my materials. I have, just going left to right, or right to left, you're backwards, but I have gloves because I don't want PlastiDip all over my hands. I have a cup here that I'm going to pour my PlastiDip into because this can here is your standard PlastiDip. Fun fact, that's why it's called PlastiDip, because back in the day you used to literally dip your parts into this stuff. This is the same mixture as your typical spray PlastiDip, but this is thinned down so that it could be used in an aerosol application. So this is much thicker and the opening isn't very big. If I take my shift knob, it barely fits through the opening. And I don't want to bump the edge when I'm bringing this out because obviously it's going to screw up my finish. So I'm going to pour this into this so I could dip my shift knob without screwing up the finish. So I have, again, a cup, standard PlastiDip, your aerosol PlastiDip. I have this carnauba wax, which I'll explain when I get to that step. I have IPA. This is 91% isopropyl alcohol. You can also use 70%. It doesn't really matter. It's just going to be used to remove any grease and contaminants from the surface. And if you choose, which I'm going to use, I also have sand here. And this was like $5 at Home Depot. They do have huge bags, but you don't need all that. I'm going to use this sand to add the texture, and I'm going to show that when I make this video. So all said, this is like $30, not even. This, I think, was $5 or $6. Carnauba wax, I'm not really sure. It's like maybe $10, but most of you guys probably have this in your garage already. IPA is a few bucks at CVS or Walmart, but you might have that as well. This can, your standard PlastiDip is like $10 a can. I believe this is more like $7 to $8 a can. Your shift knob, you could use whichever one you want, and I'm not including that in this price, obviously. And this bolt. I have this bolt here, which is a 1.75 thread pitch, I believe. I'm not really sure about the thread pitch. I don't remember because this was a few months ago that I purchased this. But this is a 1.25 thread pitch. And the idea is that I could thread this into here. By the way, this is in WC Lathewerks shift knob, and he uses brass inserts, which is awesome. Some companies use plastic inserts and they get mangled up and stripped out. I can't recommend using a different thread pitch if it's plastic, but this is brass, so it's perfectly fine. And the only reason I'm using a 1.7 thread bolt is because that's all that they had at Home Depot. I couldn't find 1.25, but it doesn't matter. This will still thread in a couple threads before it gets stuck, and that's all I need. I just need to use this as a handle so that I can dip my shift knob without touching it. So with that being said, I'm going to get started here. Obviously, I'm going to put my gloves on so I don't get PlastiDip all over my hands. Then I'm going to stir this up. It doesn't say to shake it, you want to stir it. I'm guessing that shaking it will put air bubbles in it, but in any case, I'm going to stir this up, pour it into this cup, and then I'll get started. I've only done this once on this test piece here, and it turned out really awesome. So I learned a lot from this test piece. It was actually powder coated. It's not bare metal, but it's a similar surface. The powder coat is in good shape and it's very smooth. So I don't expect to have any issues with peeling or anything like that. If I would have any issues with peeling, firstly, I'll let you guys know. I'm not going to sit here and act like this is the best thing ever if it's falling apart. If it falls apart, I'll let you know. But if it falls apart for whatever reason, and if the PlastiDip peels off, I'm pretty sure all I have to do is sand down my shift knob. This is a bead blasted finish, by the way, so it's not really super smooth, but it's definitely not rough by any stretch of the imagination. It's not as smooth as something being polished, but I think it's going to be good enough for PlastiDip. If you've ever used PlastiDip, you know once it sets and once it cures, it really doesn't peel as much as people think it does. So I'm going to get started here. So the first thing I have to do is prepare my shift knob, and to do that, before I even put my gloves on, I'm going to take my carnauba wax, get some on my finger, and I'm going to spread it around this recessed area. And the reason for that is I have the 6-speed, so I have a reverse ring, and there's a piece that needs to fit up in this recessed area. If I don't do this, then PlastiDip is going to stick inside, and that's not good. That's going to change the dimensions, and that can cause issues. So I want to spread this wax around, so if any PlastiDip would get inside, it's not going to stick, and it's going to be very easy to remove. After I do that, I want to wipe off any excess. Then I want to put my gloves on so that I don't get any more wax on my shift knob. And then I'm going to clean it with IPA. So you just take your alcohol, put it on a paper towel, and rub all over so that it removes any dirt or contaminants or oils from your finger, any wax or anything like that. Now that it's clean, I can take my bolt and insert it until it's hand tight. And it's a brass insert in there, so I'm really not worried about stripping it. Obviously, you don't want to go crazy, but just snug it up so that it won't come loose. And now I have this handle, so I don't have to touch my shift knob at all. I could just set this aside. And I'm going to take my cup and this PlastiDip here. I'm going to take the lid off, stir it up, and pour it into my cup. Now I have this piece of wire to stir it up, but you can easily use a long screwdriver or anything that you have. It really doesn't matter, but just stir it up slowly. You want to make sure that it's stirred thoroughly, but you don't want to really put any air bubbles into this mixture. So now that I have my PlastiDip in my cup, I am about ready to go, but let me explain the rest of the process. I'm going to take my shift knob, dip it in my PlastiDip. The instructions on the side say to dip it about 1 inch every 5 seconds, so very slowly in and very slowly out. At that point, obviously, it's going to be completely coated in PlastiDip. Next, I want to take my sand, and I'm just going to grab a little bit of it and sprinkle it over my shift knob. I don't recommend dipping it because that's going to mess up your finish, and I don't recommend pouring a bunch of sand on because when I was working on my test piece, what I found is if you pour too much sand, then all the tiny granules will fill in the gaps between the larger ones, and it gives you actually a smoother texture. So for a more aggressive texture, which is what I'm going for, it's what I prefer, I am going to just sprinkle it on, and that will help give me the texture I want. I will note that adding sand is completely optional if you want. There are videos on YouTube on how to add texture just by using the spray PlastiDip, but I chose to add the sand for extra effect. After I sprinkle this with sand, I am going to use my aerosol PlastiDip to give an extra coat over top of the sand, and that will help bond it to the PlastiDip as a whole. This aerosol PlastiDip is going to adhere to the other PlastiDip, and it's all going to become one layer, and it's going to trap the sand in between. Another quick note is the PlastiDip in my cup here is thick, and if I just set it in one place, it's going to sag. So I'm going to have to keep continuing to move my shift knob around so that it doesn't settle in one place and so that my coating is uniform. So with that being said, I guess it's time to get started. I'm just going to go nice and slow. I'm going to bring it right up to the edge, but I don't want any PlastiDip inside if I can avoid it. That's good, and I'm bringing it back up. You can see already how it is a liquid, but it's very thick. So if you leave it in one spot, like I said, it's going to drip. So you kind of have to keep moving it around and playing with it. I just had a high spot from the bottom where I brought it up, so I blew it back down and it seems to have gone away. And I'm just going to keep an eye on this. So I'm going to keep moving it around, make sure that it doesn't settle in one area, make sure that it doesn't sag. And that's going to be very boring, so hit the time lapse. Alright guys, it has been about 30 seconds or so. I just wanted to wait a little bit so that this starts to set up slightly so it isn't completely dripping. But now is when I'm going to add my sand. But I wouldn't go more than a minute before adding your sand, otherwise you're going to have issues. You don't really want this to dry, you just want it to get a little bit tacky. So I'm going to take my sand and sprinkle it over this shift knob. However, before I do, I want to take my PlastiDip in the can and make sure it's all shaken up and ready to go, because I'm going to spray this on as soon as I finish adding my sand. So make sure you have this can ready to go before you add your sand. So here is my finished shift knob. It has not set at this point. It's still very wet, so I just need to let it cure. I obviously want to continue to keep an eye on it, make sure that my PlastiDip is not sagging or dripping or anything like that, but it seems to be doing well. For the top layer of PlastiDip, I know that was kind of quick, but I just sprayed on a fairly thin layer. I sprayed it on thick enough so that it locked all the sand granules in place, but not so thick that I couldn't feel the texture through it. So I'll show you guys once it actually cures and it's finished, but so far it's looking great. And there is at least one other step that I need to do on this shift knob, but you'll see that in a minute. What's up, guys? So it is the following morning and I have my shift knob right here. It is cured and it's ready to go. I definitely recommend keeping an eye on it for at least 1 to 2 hours after you dip it, just to ensure, like I said, that it doesn't sag, because it will. And it might not look like it's sagging, but it's very slow and it will happen over time. And before you know it, it's uneven. So I did keep an eye on it. I actually ended up hanging it upside down like this. I tied a wire around this bolt and hung it upside down, which worked awesome. So I'm actually very, very impressed with how this turned out. And I'm not saying that because this is my video. I'm saying that because I'm seriously like impressed with how well this turned out. As I said, there are these tiny grooves on the bottom of the shift knob, which I had added, and they actually came out. They're slightly smaller, as you might expect, because PlastiDip is a fairly thick coating, but I'm impressed that they actually show through. So I'll be sure to give you guys a close-up of this texture in a minute. But the one last step I have to do is remove this bolt and this wax that I put inside. I did get some PlastiDip in there, so I'm glad I put that wax in there. But I have a pick and I have a paper towel. With the wax, I'm expecting this to wipe out, but in case it doesn't, I have my pick. So I'm just going to go in here and wipe out all that PlastiDip. It really didn't cause any interference issues, but let's get it out of there. So as you know, PlastiDip wipes off pretty easily to begin with, but I wanted to add a layer of protection by putting wax in there. So there you go. Now it's nice and clear, not any issues. So here is a finished shift knob, and this took a day, and like I said, pretty much $30. So that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this video breaks the internet. This is a great option other than Flossy or any other shift knob. I mean, there's a lot of shift knobs out there and a lot of them are really expensive. And as I said in the beginning of this video, there aren't many textured shift knob options. In fact, I don't think there are any. So you can apply this to just about any shift knob that you have. So my only question to you is, which is better, this or Flossy? I'll catch you guys next time. What I really want to address in this video is my decision to repaint my car. I've received several comments and questions on multiple videos about my decision to repaint my car. A lot of them are asking the same question, which is, why would you choose to repaint your car when you could either PlastiDip it or wrap it, which are both cheaper?